I've been doing IT security management for I would say close to 20 years. Before that, did pen tests, security concepts, stuff like that. And I've been in mostly regulated environments, quite a bit of exposure to legal requirements, etc. Um, and the second bullet point is sort of like the alphabetical. What I know, I did quite a lot of IT baseline protection from the German BSI. And the last thing that I found in the alphabetical list is the Vertrauensdienstegesetz in Germany, which is the trust services law. And obviously I'm from Germany, so. Agenda, so we'll start a little bit about how are ISMS supposed to, what are they? Second, how are they supposed to function versus reality? Then hacking, which is a bit short, some anecdotes, and then some recommendations, depending on like what sort of your role is in that. So, management systems in general. There are probably two that you know. The one is the ISO 9001, which is quality management, and then the other one is 2701, security management. The important thing about those standards is they don't in themselves guarantee that you have quality or management. They make sure that you do management of quality, management of security, and the idea is that by continuous improvement you'll get better. So that's an important fact to keep in mind. So and also that applies to certifications. So if you have a certification for one of those, you're doing that stuff, but where you started off, where you currently are, and where you're ending up with, that's undefined, you know? So ISMS. So essentially, you have a process because management systems are process-based. So you have documentation, so policies, procedures. Don't give your password away. Clean desk policy, blah blah blah. The central role for that is the I guess CISO or whatever the term is that's used. That person or that team, they draft up all the documents. Essentially providing all the people that are involved with guidelines on how they are supposed to do their work. Then the next important part is internal audits. So then those people go and check if everyone is complying with those things, right? And the last item, risk and incident management, is about, well, we're supposed to do like 10-character passwords, but our system only allows 8 characters. What do we do now? Well, you're not fulfilling with the requirements, so that's a risk per definition. So essentially, you write down the risk, someone has to accept it, and then everything is happy. And with incidents, more or less the same, just not sort of planned, but it just happens. So, CISO, ISO, depends on the size of the organization. There's at least a dozen of role names that can be assigned. The two important stakeholders is management, because they are the ones who say, okay, we want to do this. We want to do security management because of legal obligations, because of contractual obligation, because we think it's a good idea. And then you have the people who are affected by that, so the stakeholders. So to give you just a short visual idea, so the fireman is the security management team, then right next to it is the management, and on the bottom you have sort of the stakeholders. So one is supposed to be IT, the right-hand side, and the other one is whatever. I couldn't find a better clip art that was public domain. So management says, okay, hey, you guys, I pay your salary. You go do stuff, right? Here's your to-do list. Do that. Then management says, okay, hey, security team, make sure we're safe, we're secure, right? So go do stuff. So the security management team then says, okay, hey, you guys, this is important, you know, do that, passwords, etc., whatever. And just like I said, you know, if they can't be complied with, then the CISO goes, okay, hey, we have a little issue here, you know, just something management to be aware of. You have essentially two options. Just accept it, so it's documented risk, or throw, you know, resources at it and we'll solve it, you know. So, theory and reality, ISMS processes. So I already said this, you know, if processes are implemented and they continue to be, you know, executed, then essentially you'll get better at the result, and the result is your security niveau, posture, whatever you want to call it. So that's the core idea of all these management systems. Um, in reality, um, the processes themselves are okay. Why don't we have effectively really good security everywhere is because essentially all the involved people, they don't get it, you know? Oh, we didn't know this applied to this system as well, you know? We thought that was sort of, or we didn't even know about it. And in my experience, the real root cause is they don't get it. Now watch to the slide. They don't get IT. So they don't get it. They don't get IT. So IT makes everything complicated. So just as an add-on, I just found this funny is I create the infinite monkey theorem. So if you have an infinite number of monkeys operating in an infinite number of ISMS, will that lead to an effective ISMS? Well, you know, probably, but that's probably not the strategy to go. So really just you want a couple of good monkeys, so to say, and they'll lead to great results. Also, processes are, you know, important. It's sort of like, this is the way we do things. But in real life, things sometimes, you know, are done differently. So in order to then, you know, if some customer so wants to audit you, you need to show, okay, we've been doing this. So sometimes the processes are, you know, just, oh yeah, let's do the process steps. We've already come to the conclusion we know what we do, but let's document whatever the process says so that, you know, we have that, and that's a great term, the performative art for that. So next up, risk management. So you have risk classes. So I have a low risk, medium risk, high risk, and you really want those to be non-overlapping, right? You want, okay, up until this point it's a medium risk, and from there on it's a high risk, right? So that's the theory. In reality, even if you just consider just finance as a risk criteria. So if the damage is higher than 1 million euro, that's a high risk, right? But what all accounts into that? If you have an outage, well, maybe you can say, okay, we're losing 100,000 euro per hour, so after 10 hours, it'll be 1 million, a high risk, right? But then there's other things to consider, like what about the cleanup of the incident? You know, all that can be counted in, and if you count everything in, it becomes very diffuse in terms of what's the number. So everyone can sort of agree, that's, you know, roughly 500,000, roughly 5 million. But if you want to be more precise, then it really gets awkward, and that's a problem obviously with clean edge risk classes. Well, is this 900,000? Is it 1.1 million? We don't know. Well, let's see. So essentially, it's more of a guessing game. Then the impact definition. So if you consider not only financial criteria, but also like operational impacts or reputational impacts, they should be also defined in a way that they don't overlap, right? So if you say, okay, let's just do financial criteria, then we can do, yeah, is it 900,000, 1.1 million euro, whatever. The reality is, the business people, most often they can't put a number on things. They, they're great with business plans. So, oh yeah, we'll build this, and then we'll make this amount of money. But if you ask them, well, what if this goes down? They're like, I don't know, So, again, guessing game. So next, and that's essentially it. We can make informed decisions, but business can't put a number on it. So I've seen this more often than less often, is that IT then says, okay, well, we've got the number of transactions. Okay, well, we can sort of put a number on it, and hey, business, why don't we take that number? Okay, let's do that. But that's not how it's supposed to work. Okay, so certifications is the next topic. When you want to get certification, you're the organization. Hey, I want to do this. But there's a step before that. So you have a certification body, the one that issues essentially those certificates, and you have someone who is an auditor. Well, he's not an auditor yet. He's an expert, and actually he's the expert. Does anyone get that reference? No? Okay, look up The Expert on YouTube. You'll like it. It's a 7-minute clip. One got it. Okay. So the expert, he has to go to the certification body and say, okay, hey, I want to be an auditor. Then he has to do some things, some trainings, whatever, and now he's an auditor, right? So the organization is like, okay, we want to get one of those certificates. So, hey, certification body, can we have one of those? They're like, well, yeah, it'll cost a bit, so give me some money, right? So, oh yeah, well, here's the list of auditors that you can pick one from. Just go talk to them and they'll audit you, and if then you have a positive result, then you get a certificate, right? So next up is, well, we'll talk to the auditor, we'll give him some money, he'll go do stuff, inspect everything, assess everything that's required, and then if in the end, you'll get a certificate. Hey, so obviously there's a conflict of interest, right? The auditor is paid by the organization, but he has to adhere to all the standards, etc., set forth by the certification body, and that's a non-resolvable conflict of interest, right? So, if you get one of those certifications, it's important they attest that you have those processes. They don't say that they don't really say anything about the quality of what the result is, right? And then the question is, how comparable are certifications? Can I have a certification ISO 27001? Great. I have another vendor here. Oh, we also have one. How can I compare those? And there's really two major factors in that. The one is scope. I can freely define my scope. I can be like a software as a service provider and define the scope of just my office IT. So like, HR, whatever. And I have a certificate. Yay! So scope is the first one. But even if you say, okay, I have 2 certificates that are sort of equivalent in terms of scope, are they comparable? No, because the depth of the audit of the auditor is really important. If you have an auditor who is great at assessing, like, are your processes functioning, etc., then he's a great auditor in terms of ISO 27001. If he doesn't know much about IT, he might say, oh, yeah, well, that Windows 7 web server that you have a risk acceptance for that. You're fine, So, and then there's the German IT-Grundschutz, which is essentially just an ISMS, like the process-based thing, but the add-on that they give with it is they give you technical requirements or process requirements. So something like, well, if you have a Windows 2019 server, you need to set this setting to B. You know, they do that, and this catalog is huge, but it's not so well maintained. But it's still, it's better than nothing. So they really putting amounts of effort in it. But the subject is huge. I mean, we're talking about potentially every aspect of IT that they need to cover, right? But the point here is they have sort of hard requirements, like what you need to do to get the certificate in the end. And one is that you need to have the documentation based on their process and templates, etc., and that needs to be complete. So if you're missing one attribute in one document, like for example, you have a list of your IT infrastructure, and it says, okay, we have a server and it's Windows 2019, and but we missed to put in like who's the admin team in charge of it, right? Well, you won't get a certificate. That's a hard criteria. So that needs to be fixed. Whereas the example, the Windows 7 web server, just the same thing. Hey, let's go. So let's go on with the next topic, which is hacking in ISMS. Did I click? My slides are lagging a bit, so I don't know if I clicked or didn't click. There you go. Okay, so I guess you already got the impression. ISO 27001 has a lot of potential for fool's gold, so something that shines but isn't really all that great. But the scope hacking we talked about. Then you can just define your own risk criteria. You can say, okay, we're a 10-person based company. We make like 5 million per year or something like that. And our risk class for medium starts at 10 million. So all we have is low risks, So you can tweak those to have a better picture in the end. And then if you really want to, if you're like I want to make my own life easier as a CISO, yeah, well, let me do internal audits that are just essentially worthless. Let me test those systems that are well maintained. Let me just ignore the the Windows 7 web server over there or whatever. And the last part is for certification. When you get the auditor, if you get a one-trick auditor that knows everything about physical security, who complains that like your fire door doesn't match to the door frame fire classes, then he's like, you need to work on that. But a real life experience, oh, that Windows XP thingy over there, it's fine, So that's a lot of ways where you can manipulate the whole system, sort of. And then I have one specific for the oh yeah, all right. If you do that, you need to keep appearance. So make sure when someone who's interested, a potential customer, they scan you, make sure that looks great. Because otherwise they'll be like, well, you have the certificate, but we found like this whole mess on the internet about you. They might ask questions. Make sure that external security posture is okay, and then you'll be sort of okay on your way. So for the BSI IT baseline protection, there's also one hack, which is they provide with all these catalogs, like one is for Windows, one is for Linux, etc. If you don't like what's in there, you can just define your own. Well, we don't like the requirement for enabling SE Linux in the Linux catalog. Well, let's make our own. Let's make our I don't know, Debian Linux catalog, and we'll just skip on the SE Linux. So you're free to sort of build your own set of requirements there, which is a bit of work, but if that's what you want to do. So let's get on to the funny stories, real life experiences. I mentioned this. I worked in a regulated environment, so this was one of the most highly regulated environments. Anything you can think of that can be put forth on you as a service provider was contractually regulated. So um, everything, like what they did is essentially, then you build up like a project team that does all these things, and especially for ISMS, you have people who review documents, you have other people who do pen tests, etc. and stuff. But still, stuff happens. So I just really I was working on a different project now. Just wanted to copy and paste something from a document that I knew they had, content that I sort of also needed. So I opened their document and found the part in the document that I was looking for, and so I like, oh yeah, and that has also the reference to the corporate document. So, but wait, that reference document, that was invalidated at least 4 years ago at the time. Okay. How does that happen? Should that happen? No, because the document needs to be reviewed regularly. So, but yeah, the document had been reviewed twice since then. So, should have been caught, right? Well, that can happen. They didn't, see it. It's, but there's another aspect, and that's they didn't look at it because that cited passage that they inserted in the document, it had Windings as the font. Windings, if you don't know, it's the symbol font. So there was nothing to see there. Got the Word document, changed the font to whatever times Roman or whatever, and yes, it had the right text, but it just and that's in an environment where you say, okay, this is as good as it gets. So stuff happens. So next up, and this is one of my personal favorites, is a different project. We from a customer, we got a security or compliance questionnaire. You probably know all those, right? Anybody not having experience with compliance questionnaires? Okay, so it was just all the same, except for one question, and we had just enjoyed that question so much. The question was, do you have any wastewater or sewage pipelines running above your IT equipment? And every question that's asked has a story to it. And I just pity the person that had to just, do all the cleanup work there. So, yes. So, recommendations. Next up. So, if you're an organization, get it CISO. And it can hurt, but the important part is you need to get someone who understands both the business aspects, the legal aspects, and IT. Those are the sort of hard skill sort of requirements to be in an effective domain. And then, of course, soft skills are important as well. You don't want that, person who knows all this stuff but just doesn't interact with anybody. So you need to get someone who's, social. And then you have one, maybe you're not a large organization. Make sure you have a backup. You don't want your buzz factor to be one. You don't want that one person who runs the show to, just quit the job or have an accident or whatever. Make sure you have a backup. So SMEs, small and medium enterprises, and just adapt as you move along. I would say those two things are really the important ones. And if you want to get a certification, get a good auditor. Good in terms of someone who really challenges you. Both in terms of processes, both in terms of IT and all the other stuff. And usually the certification cycles are 3 years, so you have an audit every year, but every 3 years you get a new certificate. After 2 certification cycles, I would recommend that you get another auditor, just so you don't get the the burn in on whatever. You want a different opinion, So um, if you're working in an ISMS, be social, establish trust. You don't want FUD to be your working principle. You want trust to be the working principle, because then people like from IT will come to you and say, okay, hey, we have this issue. Okay, yeah, essentially, I mean, this is a risk, we will handle it, but you want those guys and girls, whoever, to come to you and tell you, okay, you won't get mad at you, etc. So, build trust. Also, it helps to build up karma points. So, if you and that's presumably applies to all of you here. IT, you can help them at time. You can be like, "What are you working on?" "Oh wait, I know that. Did you try this?" And they'll be so grateful. So, build up karma points. As for risk classes, settle for less. If you have like 6 risk classes and a risk matrix in terms of impact and probability, you get so many edges where like, is that here, is that there, is it there? It's the guesswork. So 3 by 3 is also just good enough. Most often it'll be 4 by 4, but do that. Then if you want to, you can have an option of doing risk analysis in 2 means. One is to say, okay, let's say we have 1 million as the financial category for impact, and well, yeah, we're above 1 million, right? Well, you can do quantitative risk analysis, which is essentially a Monte Carlo simulation, where you'll get a result that in the end should be more appropriate, but this whole thing is mathematically so complex and requires so many input data, you really don't want to do that. The only time you want to do that is when everyone involved, and I mean, I'm talking like the people in security management, I'm talking about the people in management and the stakeholders, all the other people, right? You just want to do that if everyone is an expert. And now for another reference. The audio is not playing. Let me do that again. Can you turn on the audio from the laptop? Okay. So the expert. Okay, he's saying, hey, I'm Scott Williams and I'm the expert. If you watch the sketch, the 7-minute the expert sketch, the solution is you're like, what? That can't be done, right? Well, he found a solution. So gotta watch the expert solution as well as a 1 or 2 minute clip. So when you're in ISMS jobs, you need to address your audiences appropriately. You need a different language when you're talking to HR. You need a different language when you're talking to IT, etc., etc. Know that, Also, look at the past. If you've done this for a couple of years, you have so much data. You have like probably dozens or hundreds of risk in your risk register, some that have been closed off, have been done away with. Use that data to evaluate whether or not the classification was appropriate. Like your end result might be, well, we have a 5 by 5 risk matrix. It clusters around the middle section. We can do away with at least 1 column, one line. So just use whatever data you collected over the years to improve. And also important, when you're working in such a field, you get contact with lots and lots of things that are supposed to happen, like strategy from management, projects that haven't been announced yet. You get contact with individual projects that they might not know about each other. So use that insight to help those people get their job done better. Tell them, okay, you should talk to that project over there with that person because he solved the problem that you're working on already. So, and of course, there's times when you can't because it's something that's still under NDA or something. But if appropriate, do that. So, and for everybody else, when you're interacting with people from an ISMS, don't expect too much of an IT knowledge. You might be lucky, you might have some people there, cherish those, especially in larger organizations, when like the ISMS team might be like 30, 50 people. If you know like the 2 or 3 maybe that have IT skills, you need to connect with them because they are your entry door into the whole ISMS organization. If you need to get something done, they're your entry door. Give feedback. They're all just doing their job. And also, and that's sort of what I have been trying to do is get people that know IT to get into ISMS, get into security management. But I would only recommend that to people who can put up with documentation work, who can put up with dealing with people that don't know too much about IT or whatever. So you have to have a certain level of patience, etc. And but if that fits you, go into that because you have lots of insights into your organization. You have you build up a lot of knowledge about surrounding like legal stuff. You just find yourself, let me read through that law, let me go talk to our corporate lawyer, whatever. You learn stuff that you didn't expect. And also career-wise, that's not a smart move. Security is in demand. So that was it. I am just on time. So now we're on to questions.
Yes, question.
Thanks for your talk. Would you agree in regards to ISO standards that there should be more safeguards into them to make sure that people don't skew them, like make them easy to get, etc.?
Well, the whole story is that especially the ISO 27001, they have an annex which contains technical or procedural also requirements. So things like you need to do patch management, so more specific things. You need to do access control. You need to have a concept, etc. So the picture I painted isn't the whole picture, but it's still just an overarching standard because it has to be suitable for small and medium enterprises to the largest organizations that we have on Earth. So I think it's already at where it should be. What I really think where they should improve is the auditors. Because they essentially, what their idea is, well, you have an auditor who can assess whatever is written in those standards. He's an auditor, right? That's only half the story, A good auditor will be like, okay, well, you just told me this. Yesterday in our audit session, I heard this from a different team, whatever. How does that map, And those are things when, especially if that comes out to be an issue where like, oh, wow, yes, where you can really improve. So I would say it's more the auditors that are the where improvement needs to happen. And that's what I sort of like about the German baseline protection standard is because it has a lot more of those the detailed technical requirements. But as well as there, you have auditors who'll be like, do you have that? Can you show me? Yes, I'll show you a document. Can you show me on the system? We'll put up something on the screen, and they'll be like, okay, yeah. And you're like, we haven't even reached the screen where that setting is, So, yeah.
Thank you very much for the talk. Could you briefly sketch the steps which are necessary to become an auditor, for instance, with regard to Wi-Fi security?
Okay. so there's like auditor is a broad class, right? Is someone who you essentially pay to assess something. The question is assessing against what baseline, against what standard. And when you're talking about like Wi-Fi, I'll be more thinking about something like a pen test. You know, so hey, just pen test our Wi-Fi. Um, essentially, the audits that, in terms of an audit, which is almost always like first check how it's supposed to be done. So documents, what are the process, what are the security levels, security settings that are supposed to set, and then check the implementation. Is that also the case? Essentially, like the standards, there's now improving number of legal like laws where things that have to be audited against the critical infrastructure. So NIS 2, well, if there's a NIS 2, there's a NIS 1. NIS 1 is about critical infrastructure in Europe. So I think the baseline was if you're providing services out of some categories like telecommunications, water, food, etc., and if you're serving more than 500,000 people, you're critical infrastructure, and then you need to have like I think it's annual audits. So those are auditors who test against the legal requirements, right? So the question is really about what setting would be a setting where you test against specifically for Wi-Fi, and the only thing I can think of right now is if it's a product, and that product is supposed, the manager says, okay, we need to get a common criteria certification, because common criteria is a product certification. So then you could be an auditor for Wi-Fi or whatever, and do that. Essentially, it comes down to independent of what you are, you need to essentially demonstrate knowledge, either because you have been already working with them and they say, okay, yeah, we know you're good, but you still have to do the some sort of test or whatever assessment in order to comply with their processes. But most often it'll be something like, well, do this training. At the end of the training, you'll do this assessment, and then you'll be an auditor. And then, as an auditor, you need to sign like, okay, I will abide to whatever principles the organization set forth, etc. I will do like annual training to keep my skills up to date, etc. So there's a lot of side work that an auditor needs to do, sort of just like any personal certification. So. And then most often, when you get a contract from some company to do an audit, you will also then again have to sign a letter of independence. Okay, I'm they pay me, but I'm independent. And there's in real life the auditors. Well, I cannot. You ask. Well, okay, we have this issue. Auditor says, okay, that's something you need to work on. And you're like, well, what do you suggest? And the auditor will be like, well, I can't suggest you because that will be consulting, and I'm not allowed to consult you with how you do. You right? But you can, with most auditors, you can sort of play the question and answer game. If we do it that way, would that be good enough? No. Well, if we do it that way, yes. So. They know about their double role, is essentially what I'm saying. Okay.
Hello. Yeah. Actually, I have some tips from my own experience as a Dutch company with around 10 people. About the auditors, I think in the Netherlands at least, there are also quite some decent ones, but it depends a bit on their organization because they have their own guidelines, sort of. Some are really like religious on the letter, and others are more of in the spirit, or they see if you have this addressed properly. Even then they judge on that. And what I also recommend, if you're looking for an internal auditor, actually get an external auditor, independent, for example, and use that one because they are actively does external audits. because they know what the latest stuff is with interpretation of certain rules.
Right.
And also ask them, for example, to keep an eye out on the stuff you do, which is actually not required by the standard, because often you see people, if they have the requirements, they make stuff up. You should write what you do.
Right.
But then they write stuff or start doing stuff because they think it's what's needed.
Yeah.
And then you get that the internal auditor, which asks like, well, where does it say that you have to do that?
Right.
And
Yes.
then you can cut the crap from
Right.
your ISMS as well. And and involve a lot of people. I think that for us, we pull in the team members who are if their stuff is being audited, we always pull in the person who actually does the work. And all the processes we have are actually the ISMS processes. Is only very separate. A small part is only ISMS only. The rest is all the ISMS, basically all the company documentation. And keep it simple.
Yeah.
I think it's really the ISO is actually really easy if you did it a few times and have it on the writ, and then if you do some other certifications, then that's really easy.
Yeah. Yeah. No, especially the ISO 27001. If you have a corporate setup working, you effectively do work, and just like you said, if you have done this a few times, a one-person show can run the show. You want a backup, right? So you want someone to go along, but you don't need 5 people in that domain. Yes, that's a stressy job then, but it's possible. And why am I saying that? Because that's what I'm currently doing.
Then I want to thank you again for having making this great talk, and thank you for the great questions. Give it up once again for Juergen.
Thank you, and then enjoy the rest of the camp.